welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video we have the long-awaited topic of gluten. Yes, we're finally getting around to this video talking everything there is to know about gluten. But before we get into the video, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the little bell so you don't miss another one of my videos. Alright, let's get into this one. Gluten-free diets have been so popular lately, especially now that people are more aware of what gluten is or are more curious about it, or they know about gluten intolerances and things like that. It's really just become a hot topic lately. I know you guys have seen all the memes and all the funny videos about gluten and what it is and all that kind of stuff. So what really is gluten? I mean, really, what is it? All it is the main storage protein that are found in grains, specifically wheat, rye, and barley. It's a mixture of hundreds of proteins, but the main proteins are going to be gliadin and glutenin. Gluten is what's responsible for giving a dough its elasticity. So, for example, take bread. That's what's going to give bread kind of that chewy and soft texture and mouthfeel. Gluten is actually also heat stable, so a lot of companies like to use this as a preservative, for example, in a lot of processed foods. It acts as a binding and an extending agent, so it's used in these processed foods to improve the moisture retention, the flavor, and the texture. The protein that I mentioned before, gliadin, contains peptide sequences that are resistant to gastric, pancreatic, and intestinal proteolytic digestion. And this is all going to be in the gastrointestinal tract. So what are some foods that contain gluten? Now, I made this a little bit easier on you guys to understand, so I just categorized products that have gluten in the barley, rye, and wheat categories. So for your wheat products, that would be things like your bread, your candy, your sauces, pastas, cereals, flour, soups, bakery items, things like that. Now remember, all species of wheat do contain gluten. That's going to be very important. So this would include durum, semolina, farro, einkorn, spelt, kamut, and triticale. I think that's how you say that. All that is a hybrid of wheat and rye. Now for barley products, that would be your soups and cereals again, beer, malt, and brewer's yeast. For rye products, that would be your cereals again, certain breads, beer, rye flour, rye milk, and any products containing that triticale that I talked about before. That's the hybrid of wheat and rye. It seems like gluten is everywhere, right? Like we can't get away from it, even in certain things that you wouldn't expect, like soy sauce or your french fries, right? Why would you think gluten is in there? So yes, the foods that we talked about just now, like wheat, barley, and rye, are going to have gluten in them, right? But don't forget about the protein that I talked about earlier. Now this can still be hidden in those processed foods like an additive. That's where things kind of get tricky. Now, why can gluten be harmful or bad for some people? The majority of people out there can tolerate gluten, but there are those of you out there that have a gluten intolerance, that have gluten sensitivity, that have non-celiac gluten sensitivity. These don't all mean the same thing, but they all have to do with some sort of gluten sensitivity or intolerance that just doesn't feel good after you consume gluten or can cause other problems, and I'll definitely get into that in a little bit. So what is celiac disease? Celiac disease is a genetic autoimmune disorder that is triggered by the consumption of gluten. So when someone with celiac disease eats gluten, what happens is that protein that we talked about earlier before interferes with the absorption of these nutrients that you should be getting from your food, and it does that by damaging a part of your small intestine called the villi. This makes it nearly impossible for somebody with celiac disease to absorb nutrients into their bloodstream, which causes a whole host of other issues. So what is non-celiac gluten sensitivity? So somebody who has this would be somebody who, when they consume gluten, they're going to have the same or similar symptoms as celiac disease, but you're not going to have that same damage to your villi like in celiac disease. Does that make sense? And finally, we have a wheat allergy. Now, technically, a wheat allergy isn't an intolerance to gluten, but they are closely related, so I do want to mention this just in case maybe you think you have a gluten sensitivity or you think you have a gluten intolerance. I'm just going to try to bring up all the other different things that you guys maybe are experiencing just to give you some clarity maybe. So a wheat allergy is an allergy to the wheat itself, not just the protein like in gluten sensitivity or celiac disease. For example, somebody who has a wheat allergy would of course avoid wheat, but they can consume gluten from rye or barley. Now, most likely you're going to end up following a gluten-free diet just because they're so closely related and the ingredients are very similar or found in the same things. So what are some common symptoms of a gluten intolerance? Now, this is definitely going to depend on the person. So some people have a ton of horrible side effects and symptoms, and some people don't really have many at all. So that's another big reason why gluten intolerance kind of gets either misdiagnosed or not diagnosed at all. So as far as the symptoms go, they're usually in 4 different areas. So the first issue would be digestive issues. So this would include things like diarrhea, bloating, abdominal pain, constipation, or even inflammation of the digestive tissue. Number 2 would be skin problems, so rashes, eczema, or skin inflammation. Number 3 would be neurological issues. So anxiety, depression, fatigue, confusion, numbness, lack of focus, and difficulty speaking even sometimes. And number 4 would be kind of the other category. So this can include things like weight loss, nutrient deficiencies, diminished immune function, osteoporosis, headaches, or even anemia. Now, if you've had these symptoms or you think you might have a gluten intolerance, please contact your healthcare provider before you go and just eliminate all gluten from your diet. Now, why would I possibly say this? So there are some tests out there for gluten-related conditions that can be skewed or come back as inaccurate if you've already switched to a gluten-free diet. At the same time, some symptoms might seem like they're gluten intolerance, but they're totally something different. So the best thing to do is just go to your doctor, let them know how you're feeling before you just self-diagnose or self-treat yourself altogether. Now, what are some gluten-free alternatives? So there are grains, starches, and flours that naturally just don't have gluten in them. Now, this would include amaranth, I don't know if I'm saying that right, brown, white, and wild rice, buckwheat, almond meal flour, and if you haven't seen it already, make sure to check out my video on how I make almond flour. It's really easy, or almond meal, completely, totally easy, pretty much the same thing, just one is blanched almonds and one is not, and I have a video on how to blanch almonds too, if you guys are curious. Then we have coconut flour, cornstarch, guar gum, millet, pea flour, potatoes, sorghum, I don't know, soy flour, teff, and quinoa. And I have a ton of recipes where I use quinoa, and I can make sure to link that somewhere on the screen in the description box as well if you guys are curious. Do keep in mind that all grains are high risk for cross-contact or cross-contamination. Now, why is this? So all grains are usually grown, milled, and manufactured all within like the same area, so it's easy to cross-contaminate them with a gluten-containing grain. Now, if you do have a gluten intolerance, make sure to buy naturally gluten-free grains, starches, and flours that are labeled gluten-free and that are certified gluten-free by a third party. Now finally, I'm just going to talk about what is involved in a gluten-free diet. So a gluten-free diet, all that means is that you're going to stay away from ingredients that include wheat, rye, or barley products. So, I mean, most products don't have that. So you can definitely still have your meats, your fish, your fruits, your veggies, your legumes, and most dairy products because they are going to be just naturally gluten-free. Now this makes me laugh. I've definitely mentioned it in another video. I was in Trader Joe's one time and I saw a sticker label on a banana that said gluten-free, and I was just like, seriously? Like, of course there's no wheat in a banana. Like, crazy. But at least, I mean, I'd rather they be overdoing it with their labeling and putting things on a banana just so people are more like aware, but I don't know. I thought that was funny. Well, I think I covered everything gluten. If I missed anything or if you guys have any additional questions, make sure to ask me them in the comment section below. I will be responding to you guys. But that's all I have for this video today, you guys. I hope you liked it and I hope you learned something new. If you did like it, make sure to give this video a nice thumbs up and don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the little bell so you don't miss another one of my videos. If you want to get my exclusive nutrition tips, healthy food recommendations, and delicious recipes right to your inbox, then make sure to head over to my description box, click the link, and join the fam. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye, guys.